Welcome to the Pot of Gold podcast, and we are here to talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. Today on the show, I have Jared Morrison, who is a wholesaler for real estate out of Tempe, Arizona. And he also engages in what he calls travel hacking. How are you doing today, Jared Morrison?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. You know, I'm really glad that you came on the show today. I'm actually really curious about some of the things you're engaged in, and I'm excited to find out about what it all looks like,
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I mean, you have definitely been super consistent in recording podcasts, and that's something I'm trying to do as well. And also excited to learn more how, wholesalers like me can work with people who lend on transactions like yourself.
Oh, yeah, we'll definitely go into that. Definitely want to help people learn about all these things so that they can make the decisions for themselves on what they want to focus on. We talk about all kinds of stuff here, and I really like the real estate side of things because there's solid assets that are backing up these risks that you're taking. And the important thing to remember is that the biggest risk of all is to not take any risks, right? So not taking any actions.
100%. Yeah, that is the biggest risk. I mean, if you do nothing and you just leave your money in the bank, every year it's worth less.
And it's circling the drain.
100%. No one's going to come and save you. You got to take the time to learn yourself and do something. There's so many ways to make money. You just got to figure out what's best for you.
Exactly. So I'd like to get into this story that you have about how you started into real estate investing. Why are you focused on wholesaling? And what was your journey like?
Yeah, so my journey started right when I graduated college. So I graduated with $75,000 in debt, my wife and I did. And I remember we had just gotten married, and my wife was like, Jared, we need to look at our student loans. And,
Yeah, it's a big looming thing when you have it, right?
Yeah. So I didn't want to look at it. When you're borrowing, you don't think about what the cost actually is. I mean, you think of like someone coming out of college, probably the average salary is 50,000 at most, or not at most, but probably average. And you think about living expenses, and to pay that amount of debt off, it's going to take years. But when you're borrowing, you just don't really think about that. So my wife made me look at it, and we created this goal to pay it all off as fast as possible. Got super into Dave Ramsey, kind of paired paying off debt creatively with also traveling by teaching English in South Korea. We did that for a year, and then came back and just paid off debt so quickly. We put, everything towards it. Every extra little thing, we lived like we were living in college and just paid it all off. It took about 5 years. And I was super into retiring wealthy and, putting money into a index fund or mutual fund.
Okay.
But then I stumbled upon real estate, and I remember listening to this podcast. It was called Lifestyles Unlimited. And at the time I was thinking, okay, well, I actually don't love the podcast, but they had one phrase that really stuck with me, because Dave Ramsey is all about like, okay, you have your baby steps and you get to the point where you're stashing away. I think it's like maxing out your 401k. I forget the exact amounts, but you're maxing out your 401k, and I'm doing the math. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to retire with 3 to 5 million, and I'll get that when I'm 65, and then I'll start living life. And I remember listening to Lifestyles Unlimited, and this guy had a quote, and he said, if you retire and you have a lot of money at 65, are you truly wealthy? No, because you don't have any time. Like, who cares that you have money now that you can barely move? And all that stuff that you wanted to do, like traveling, not that you can't travel at that age, but in terms of the type of traveling, that really hit home. So I started getting into rental, which, I thought I could retire with passive income. Everyone tells you that real estate's passive, it's passive. Well, I can tell you from the rentals I've owned, unless you have a lot of money already, it's not passive. And, CapEx, the 10% that people tell you to calculate, I mean, that's over a long period of time. But what happens when, you're projected to make $5,000 in a year, and then your AC goes out and you need a new one? I mean, there goes 2 years of profit. So that kind of just like hit me in the face of like, okay, well, if I want to retire with 10 grand a month, then I really need at least 20 grand a month of net profit coming in to really do that safely. And then, going down the path that I was going down, I'm like, this is going to take forever. So then I started looking into, okay, well, I love real estate. I want to get into this full time. And what's the quickest way to, kind of pair my real estate love with my active income and introduce to wholesaling? Yeah.
I like that though, because some of the mentors that I've talked to, they talk about finding your zone of genius. And what that refers to is not just the thing that you might be good at, but also the thing that is going to make you money and that you might be able to do better than anybody else. And so it sounds to me like wholesaling is kind of those point of confluence for you where you're going to be able to make the money with it. It ties into your love of real estate, and then you can just kind of go forward with it and then invest to what you're making into the other avenues as well to diversify.
Yeah, it's using and developing skills that all coincide. I was a CPA for 6 years, and it's like, yeah, those are number skills and stuff, which is great, has been my foundation for a lot. And then I went into sales, which is a whole nother skill set. But again, it's not completely complementary to owning real estate. So, what's the most important part of every business? It's lead generation. If you're in charge of the leads, you got something good going. So if I want to be in real estate and I want to own all these things and I want to go into multifamily, well, I need to learn how to find the leads, because at that point, I'm really just call myself a deal finder. I find the deals, and then if it fits my buy box, we keep it. If it doesn't fit my buy box, what type of flip is it? Does it make sense to take down myself? And then if neither of those are yes, then I wholesale it. So it's really just trying to create this conveyor belt of deals coming in, mostly focusing on active income while the business is growing. And then, to offset taxes, start acquiring more properties, and then start going more, setting up the business to run without us, me and my business partner, David, to where we can go focus on acquiring bigger properties and getting into more of like the high level stuff rather than being on the phone.
Got it. Okay. That's interesting. Now, I know we talked a little bit before the episode, but you didn't just wake up one day and say, oh, wholesaling's the thing. What was that journey like?
Yeah. So, I mean, shiny object syndrome. I have mixed feelings about that, because I felt like I really connected with a lot of the different avenues you can make money in real estate. I mean, right now, you look around your office, every little thing you can make money on, whether it's a couch, a table, the piano that's in my background that's not real, your hat that you're wearing. And it's really just, what do you want? What are you going to be most passionate about to where you can do the hard things? Because in every avenue, they're all hard. So I started out wholesaling actually with my brother, and it was just not something I thought I wanted to do. I didn't really want to talk to people on the phone. So then I went the gator route because of my background in accounting, and then didn't really like that either, even though I had the skills. And then I went to TC stuff, and then just happened to meet my business partner at Squad Up Summit. And people were like, okay, so you can underwrite the deals, you can talk to the seller, you understand the lending portion of it. Why aren't you wholesaling? So that's really where we dove in. And I mean, it's been quite the journey so far. I mean, in the first couple of months we started wholesaling, we ended up buying a mobile home park in Michigan. And then a couple of months later sold that. And then have really just been, we have a couple fix and flips going on right now. And then we're wholesaling, really just trying to get our processes in place. And just like I said, get the machine going. But building a business is a lot more work than social media makes you think it is.
Well, I think a lot of people get started on something hard and then they realize, hey, it's harder than I thought it was going to be. Do I really want this? And part of the reason I've been doing this podcast is because I've been trying to answer this question for myself, is like, what is the thing that drives entrepreneurs? And maybe it's the answer is different for each person, but I'm trying to lock in what that is, because if we can figure out what drives us, and that could be a negative drive or a positive drive, But if we can line up the way we do things with the systems you're talking about, with processes and stuff, to align with those drives, well, then I feel like even if things get really, really hard and you're going to face difficulties and trials, well, then you've got things set up to where you're going to be able to push through. And so that's the question I'm trying to answer with a lot of these interviews.
That's a great question. And I honestly, one that I've been trying to answer myself because, like in the accounting world, I was on a path to make great money, but I didn't like the lifestyle of just grinding. And you kind of had to pick your career and your family, your career and your hobbies, but you couldn't pick three. You had to pick two. And so I moved into sales, and then I had a life where life was great. I mean, I worked like 6 to 8 hours a day, I could golf every Friday if I wanted to, take clients out. The work was like very manageable, but I just didn't feel fulfilled. So, I mean, I've honestly been trying to answer that question myself of, what is driving me? Why leave something where I could be, quote unquote, set for life in the sense of, make great money and have this great lifestyle. But I do feel like, I don't know. I feel pulled to do more and pulled to, I don't know, make an impact. And also, one thing, I don't know if I heard this, but basically with whatever you're doing in your W-2, look at who you're projected to be. And then you look at them and you say, do I want their life? And if you do, then you're in the right spot. But if you don't, then, you either need to find another W-2 or entrepreneurship. And I just didn't find anyone. Like working for Pace, like that might be someone I could work for, because that dude is, striving to be the best he can be in all areas of life. And that's someone I really look up to. But in these, other jobs that I've had, I haven't seen that level of drive to be that kind of person. So
it's interesting you bring that up. When I was younger, very start of my marriage, I worked for a customer service call center, right? And I was selling things like cable television and internet services, but I hated the work. I was doing it because I didn't feel like I knew how to do anything else. And you got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
But one day I took a look around the office and I saw that there were people in their mid 70s, their early 80s that were stuck working the same job for $10 an hour. And I realized it was because they hadn't planned for their future and they hadn't developed the skills that were going to be high paying. And then if I didn't make some kind of a change, that was going to be me in 50, 60 years. And I was like, wow, that is scary. And so I quit my job, and that was terrifying because I didn't know what I was going to do next. But I went back to school to learn a trade, and I was able to triple my income over the course of the last 6 or 7 years. So like that was a huge, terrifying thing to do. But because I committed myself 100% to finding a solution and working hard to develop a skill, it turned out really well. But I didn't know that going into it. And I think that there are times in our lives, in our careers, where we feel like we have grown to a point where we can, and that if we want to grow, we're going to have to take uncomfortable action. And sometimes the fact that it's uncomfortable stops us from taking that action. And some of us never go past the moment of discomfort.
For sure. I mean, you just become like, I don't know how to explain it. Just you feel safe in what you're doing, even though you're not happy with it. Like I distinctly remember we used to walk to Starbucks. I used to work by the Biltmore, and we'd walk to Starbucks like almost every day, honestly. And we were at the office so long. And I just remember all of us talking about what life would be outside of accounting. And it's just like you almost get into this mindset where there is no life outside of what you're currently doing.
Yeah.
And then at some point I developed the mindset of like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like literally, what's the worst thing that could happen? I live in America. Like what, I go get a different job and I get paid a little less. My apartment's a little smaller. I'm lucky enough to have family that lives nearby. So, I mean, we have to move in with my parents. Like, I mean, I don't want to do that, but really working from the frame of backwards from there, everything else seems a lot less worse once you realize, you can take care of your essential needs to go try for something big.
Yeah. And it came down to this question of why not me? I'll never know if I don't give it a shot. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And maybe I'll go out and put all this effort in and find out, okay, it wasn't for me, but I'll never know until I go out and try to find out. I'm on board with that. There's this, what would you call it? It's almost like a daydreamer mentality that says, oh, dream about these things because they're forever out of reach, and all I'll ever do is dream about them. But the safety of your job isn't as secure as maybe you'd hope. And so sometimes there's a rude awakening that happens, like I think a lot of people encountered when they lost their job during the pandemic.
Yeah. And that's why, it's not just about your side hustles. It's all about, like what you're talking about, financial literacy, because, while offense, I do believe is the most important thing. Cool thing about entrepreneurship is once you learn how to make money for yourself, there's no one who can take that away from you. So you could acquire several millions of dollars and lose it all, and you will get it back quickly. That's why you see so many of these entrepreneurs who they take too big of risk, but at the same time, they know that, you could put me in any city. I'm not talking about me because I don't feel like I'm there, but the successful entrepreneurs.
That's the important word.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'm in the process of it. But what social media doesn't tell you is that you actually have to go do these things for years before you can get to the point where you're on the phone and you know exactly how to solve someone's problem they have. So, that's the cool thing about entrepreneurship is you can just make money anytime you need to once you figure out how to do it. But that's a journey for sure to get to that point. But then also playing defense of, knowing how much money you should probably have stashed away. Everyone says don't have cash. Well, everyone says that until you need cash. So deciding what that balance is for you of where you feel safe enough. There's always that talk about don't have any money, so you're always motivated. I don't know if I'm.
Yeah, I've heard that before too. Like, what's the number in your bank account that you need to take it down to so that you're going to go out and hustle harder?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a balance there. And then, there's other investments. There's, your savings rate in general, cutting costs while you're taking risks. Yeah, just all a big balance that takes intentional moves to have a chance of succeeding at it. But none of it's easy.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the cash reserves, because I remember this Disney episode of the DuckTales where Uncle Scrooge has this big vault of gold coins that he likes to swim in, right?
Yeah.
And the nephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, they're asking him about it. And he says, oh, this is just petty cash. My fortune is much bigger than this. This is just what I have in case of emergency. And I always thought that was pretty good.
No, that's, I don't know if you need, a vault full of gold. Maybe you do, but yeah, it's just coming up with that amount that you're comfortable with to where you can still take risks, but at the same time, your family's going to eat.
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool. My next question, I guess, is to try to find out, did you run into any serious problems as you were trying to build your business that took a lot of effort to resolve? And what can you teach us about how you resolve those problems?
Yeah. So, I would say that the biggest issue for anyone who is trying to get into entrepreneurship is this big battle with the number one enemy, themselves. Have you ever met someone who's not busy?
No, I don't think so.
Everyone's busy.
Yep.
Everyone finds time to do, whatever they habitually do or what is actually important to them. And so for me, I thought that I had to leave my W-2 in order to get things done because I was a project manager. So I went from accounting to I was a project manager for a subcontractor for commercial. And I had all this time, to be honest. But the thing that kind of threw me off was, we have like 10 to 12 projects going on at once. So I could get some random calls. And all of a sudden, if I'm working on real estate, that derails me. And what I realized after I quit my W-2 was that was creative avoidance for sure. There's enough time if you schedule and you time block and you put your phone away and actually do the work, there is time to get a lot done. I mean, you can't have everything, but you can have anything. And for me, I've chosen my family, I've chosen real estate, I've chosen my faith, and I've chosen my health, which includes working out and playing sports. But other than that, like I've trimmed pretty much everything else out. And Pace, he introduced this calendar series where he met with like Dan Martell. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah, I'm actually taking coaching from him.
Oh, sweet. So he met with Dan Martell for an hour every month for a year, and every hour was like 30 grand. So he spent,
I believe that.
so he spent, you know, almost $500,000 on this framework. And essentially, since I've been following that framework, again, what I've realized is that I'm not being intentional with every hour of my day. It's so easy to just get distracted where you get to the end of the day and you're like, what did I do? And even though you've done a lot of things, but really being intentional with your calendar and putting all the things that are most important to you on it and hitting those, that is, and then your rest of your day will fill up. You'll still be busy, don't worry, but you'll at least gotten the things done that mean the most to you. So like for me, like I always put on my schedule, when am I going to hang out with my kids? And that's a non-negotiable. So I'm going to hit that one. I'm not just like, oh, when I'm done with work. Or when it comes to work, how many hours do I need to do this specific thing in order to make a certain amount of money? And I'm not completely there yet where I know, okay, if I put 5 hours, I'm going to make this amount of money. But I do know that if I'm not hitting these KPIs, these key performance indicators, that I'm not going to be making money. It doesn't matter what I fill my day with, whether I'm, entering transactions into QuickBooks, whether I'm like building out a website. If I do not hit these KPIs, I will not make money. And so really scheduling out the most important things and living and dying by your schedule has been huge for me. And what I would recommend for people in their W-2 is, I would always think if I'm planning, then I'm not actually doing. So I'm just wasting time. But the reality is, if I don't plan it out, and if I've been taking 4 hours every Sunday to go through all of this and map it out on my calendar of how my day is going to look like, if I do not do this, I will not hit all my goals. So it's actually the most important thing is to plan for the week.
Well, I think you hit a very, very important point is that you have to measure what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that means writing it down. You got to be able to look at it so you can get feedback on what you're doing wrong or what you're doing that's working. And so you can double down on the things that are working and shift the things that maybe aren't working or maybe are important but don't push the company forward, and you shift them to the responsibilities that you can outsource. But if you don't write anything down, you're never going to get that feedback. You're never going to be able to look at it and say, hey, this is where I need to make the changes.
100%. I mean, I hear more and more, like, I always just thought that it was for me, like, okay, like I just need to write things down. But now, it's scientifically being proven that when you put pen to paper, like you are more likely to do whatever you're saying because there's some sort of connection between, moving your hand while you're thinking and slowing you down. There's something going on in the brain that makes it more likely to happen. So
Interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I listen to a lot of podcasts that talk about this stuff. And I don't think it's a coincidence that every personal development person is like, you need to write down your goals. Don't type them, write them down and really reflect. That's the toughest part. That's the part that I'm still working on. I mean, I'm working on a lot, but I've gotten pretty good at planning out my week. But in terms of the daily reflections of being like, okay, I did or did not hit my goal. Why? What can I do tomorrow to make it better? I need to get better at that. But it's so easy to get caught up in the week and with stuff that comes up. Like, I was filing a memorandum earlier this week and I thought it was going to take like 30 minutes to make the changes I need to make. Well, all of a sudden, Adobe doesn't work and it takes me an hour and a half. And then I just end up stopping. It just so easy to just get thrown around in your day.
I think you're really accurate about this because if you don't claim your time by planning it out, the world will claim it. There's always somebody out there or something out there that wants your time from you.
For sure. And again, creative avoidance. Like I remember asking Pace, we had an interview with him about the mobile home park that we purchased, because everyone a part of that transaction met at Squat Up Summit. And I remember afterwards, I was like, hey, Pace, what's the key to being able to post, but then at the same time get all your work done? And he grabs his phone. Where's my phone? He goes, look, he grabs his phone, opens up Instagram, and types something out and posts it. He's like, look, that took 30 seconds. Quit overthinking it and just do it. And then it's like, when you actually, look at it from a high level of how you operate on your phone. I mean, how much time do you spend thinking about posting rather than posting, or scrolling rather than posting? And if you eliminate your scrolling and just focus on the actual posting, it really takes no time at all. But then again, it's just a mental battle.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's that shift that all entrepreneurs have to make from being a consumer to a producer.
Yeah.
And so the more value you add, and the more, like Dan Martell talks about, how you obtain what you desire for other people. And so the more value you add and throw out into the world, the more that's going to come back to you, because you're out there working to be a producer, and reality rewards people that add to the whole, how would you call it, existence. The natural law of existence is entropy. And if you go out there and you reverse that, well, then the universe seems to recognize that.
Yeah. Yeah. As much as people, hate on Jeff Bezos, everyone orders from Amazon.
Yep.
There's a reason that he's one of the richest in the world. It's because you can get something the same day. How crazy is that?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Like, we don't have teleporters, but we got Amazon Prime.
I know. We could literally order something right now and it'll be here tonight, and we didn't leave our chair. I mean, that's why he has so much money.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing to look at some of those really successful entrepreneurs like Bezos and Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, and even Warren Buffett, with like all of his ownership and all these, what do you call them? These companies that pay out dividends, right? So
yeah,
really interesting. All right, well, let's move on to talking about the between wholesalers and transactional lenders. You want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, another tough thing about business is we talked about time, and time is important. So in business, you really have to focus on what you're good at. I mean, in the beginning, you're doing everything, because you really can't afford to pay someone a salary. Like, you need to be like, I'm doing the TC work. We're funding our own deals. Yeah, essentially everything that has to do with the business I'm doing. But you get to a point where you have enough deal flow going on, and depending on your strategy, like let's say I go direct to seller, my earnest money that I'm going to be depositing is going to be much less than if I go through an agent, because if you go through an agent, they want 1% of the purchase price. Yep. Well, the average purchase price in Arizona is $450,000. So if I have 5 deals in the pipeline, then that's a lot of money. And then if I have a fix and flip going on, and then, we have our operational expenses as well that are monthly. At that point, you start to look out at who is someone that can, not how, but who can help me in the situation where I can do more deals and can kind of, take some of that burden off me. And you develop a little bit of a partnership with guys like yourself, transactional lenders. So why don't you go into a little of what you do?
Yeah, so one of the things we're going to be doing is funding money for wholesalers that are looking to scale their business, like you're talking about. And the reason we structured it this way is because there's actually 3 trades that all entrepreneurs are going to make over the course of their career. The first one is they're going to trade time for money, and that's the first tier. The second one is you're going to trade your money for time so you can get more of it back. And that's where transactional lenders are going to come in. And then finally, the last one is where you're trading money for money. And that's why we do investing. And so what we do is, in order to help wholesalers scale, is we take on part of the responsibility of their business, and we take over the transactional side of things so that they can focus all of their time and energy on sourcing more deals and closing more deals. And that's one of the skills that everybody's going to have to learn, no matter what kind of business you have, is how to delegate parts of your business so that you are able to focus your time and energy on things that are going to give you a higher return. And the way we do that as transactional lenders is we cover earnest money deposits and we cover double close transactions. There's a few other types of transactions that we do as well, but they're more complicated, so we're not going to go into that on this episode. But that's the gist of it.
Do you guys do TC work as well? Like, do you have your own TC that you
We
use?
actually hire out a TC, so we're doing kind of the similar thing. We don't handle the TC work because we want to focus on the thing that we're good at. And so we offload that to somebody else, and that's actually part of what we do with our business processes. Is when somebody submits a deal, we have a $250 non-refundable fee that we charge up front, and that goes directly towards paying our transactional coordinator in case the deal falls through. Then she's still paid for her time.
Okay. And do you have, does your TC handle the entire transaction, or are they just focused on your gator portion? Or
so they'll be handling all of the transactional stuff for the EMD. They'll communicate with the title company all the way up to closing.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you from firsthand, all the time that I'm spending on, like, let's say we have enough transactions where, let's say we need like 50 grand in earnest money. Well, if I have this relationship like we have, I know exactly who to go to who can handle this. But if I don't have these relationships, then now I'm raising capital, or I have to say no to these deals.
Yep.
So it's really important to develop relationships like this, because ultimately, when you're taking your time from the money-making activities, you're costing your business money. And it's tough to grasp that, to think, okay, well, let's say, a transaction coordinator for a subject to deal is $1,000 to $1,200. Well, that's $1,200 that's directly coming out of my pocket because it's my business. But how much time am I spending on this transaction coordination? A lot. Yeah. I mean, I have a deal going on in Northern Arizona. And if you look at our contracts and all the paperwork and everything, I've probably spent like 20 to 25 hours on this, where I could have paid someone $1,200 to do it all. But instead I'm doing it. And when I'm doing it, what am I not doing?
You're not going out and sourcing deals and closing.
Yeah.
Making offers, all those things, And it's an interesting thing to realize. One of the things that kind of put this into perspective for me was that if I wanted to move a mountain, I could technically go out there with a shovel and a bucket, and over time I could do it. But if I got 100 people with me to help me do it, it's going to go a lot faster. Yeah. Or I could also hire a backhoe or other types of heavy machinery. And like, these are different forms of leverage. And so in order to get the most bang for your buck, you find the thing that you're really good at that's going to drive the most ROI to your business, and you focus on that, and then you find ways to outsource everything else. Because no matter what all these companies you could think of out there, Walmart, Amazon, etc., there's no way that just Jeff Bezos could run all of Amazon. Yeah. Like, he's smart, and he set up systems so that these other people and their labor can make it happen. But he could not make it all happen going around driving truck to deliver packages. It's just not possible. And so this is one of the skills that we're trying to we're trying to learn and help other people learn, is the skill of leverage of people, of capital, of collaboration, of systems like code and processes, and just all these things that are going to amplify your results.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're not going to get very far if you're just by yourself. And then you're stuck in your business. I mean, that's the thing about Owners Club, is how do you build a business where you're not just a high paid employee? And at some point, everyone has to be a high paid employee, at least in the beginning. But what are you doing to put the people in place to get you out of there as soon as possible, which is not super fast? I mean, you have to go through, like for instance, like I was skip tracing some of our leads, because I thought it was important to know the information I'm going after. So that way, when I'm training someone, I can tell them exactly, one, where we're getting the information, why it's important, and how we can use that to get a deal.
Well, I think this is cool that you're going into this, because I read a book called Great CEOs Are Lazy. And he talks about how there's 5 hats that all CEOs should be wearing, and one of them is the player hat. So you do have to do the work and learn how it works in order to set up and build systems. But when you're in the player hat, the objective is to get out of that spot as quickly as possible. And then you have other ones, which are like the architect, the engineer, the coach, which is basically teaching the systems and processes to your people and helping them grow into their roles. And then the last one is the leader. And so I think that it's important that we recognize that there are different roles that you're going to have to take on throughout the journey, but we have to have the end goal in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And, one pill that's hard to swallow is you're not going to keep one. You're going to always says your vibe attracts your tribe, but also your level of leadership is going to attract the level of people that come to you. Yeah. And so really just knowing that while you're doing all the things you're doing to grow your business, the most important thing that you can do, that coincides with revenue, is develop yourself so you don't lose people because you're a bad leader. And I mean, that's tough to do. I mean, there have been several areas in my career where, delegating is very tough, because when I'm training someone, I'm not generating revenue. I'm not doing my job. I got to do my job later. So it's really, developing those leadership skills and management skills to where, one, people want to work with you, and then you can develop someone to take your spot.
Exactly. Well, and it doesn't always have to be that either. Like we were talking about, there's collaboration when we work with other businesses so that we can kind of offload some of the things that we're doing, help them out. And it's like a symbiotic relationship where everybody wins. And I think that's really admirable as well, because I got into entrepreneurship partially because of this idea that the more money I have, the more people I can help. And I think that entrepreneurship is actually a self-improvement vehicle that's disguised cleverly as a capitalist pursuit. And it's just been amazing to look back on the last year and a half, 2 years that I've been engaged in trying to build a business and see all the personal development I've made. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you have to. If you don't grow, you're not going to get very far, and people aren't going to want to work with you. It was actually. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine.
I was going to kind of change a little, but
okay, I'll finish with this then. I was listening to Tom Bilyeu, owner of Impact Theory and Quest Nutrition, and he had the multi-billion-dollar sell or the exit out of it. He said that capital is essentially infinite. It's just believing you. And so your task is to become a kind of person that capital can believe in. And I really like the way he framed that.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I think it gets into, some self-sabotaging beliefs that I think all of us have if you don't come from money, of, not deserving money or not thinking it's possible. And, if you don't believe it's possible, then the universe isn't going to believe it's possible. They're not going to give you that opportunity if you can't even believe in yourself to do it. So that's definitely, something we all have to overcome, because I found that, and I've seen it in others, that we fall in love with some of these processes of like, doing the thing. But then once it comes down to executing, of like, oh, wow, this is actually a warm lead, the urgency, you just like, in a perfect world, you need to call that person right away. Well, why aren't you calling them? Why are you going back to what you had on your calendar rather than doing what's closest to the money? So all of this is mindset. All of this is, glass ceilings that have formed around us that we just got to break through. And it's been a hard but fun journey so far.
It's been the most fulfilling I've ever had in my life. And I think that it goes back to that question I'm trying to find, is what drives us? And I wonder if it's just we need that sense of fulfillment. And so we're working hard to fit.
For sure. I mean, I think we're all called to do something, whatever you believe in, you were put here to do something. And if you don't feel like you have that calling or that purpose, then a lot of times life's just like, what is this for? What am I doing? If I'm not chasing some goal or dream, if I'm not helping people, then what is this life all about? And I feel like the people, I don't know. I feel like the people who aren't in entrepreneurship, which you don't have to be in entrepreneurship. You can work for organizations that, serve the that you believe in. But if you don't have some sort of purpose, then what are you filling that time with? Are you just kind of putting your head down, watching TV and, going about your day, thinking about Friday night when you're going to go out, have a good time? And that's the cool thing about entrepreneurship, and maybe why I don't think I could go back to a W-2 unless I, worked for an organization that I truly believed in, because I want to have purpose. I want to actually make a difference. I want to fulfill my calling and find out what that is.
It's an adventure, really. No, I agree 100% with that. Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Where can people go to connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and YouTube. The handles are at Jared Morrison RAI. I'm also on Facebook. I don't know that handle, but you could probably just search my name. There aren't too many of me.
Okay.
And yeah.
Well, I'll be sure to include them in the YouTube description. So if people want to look in the YouTube description, you'll be able to find ways to connect with Jared as well.
Sounds good.
Well, apart from that, are there any recommendations or resources you would have for people that are just getting started that you think that would be useful for them to know what the next step is?
Yeah, I would say, and this is something I've actually thought of recently, and I'll give a little story about it. So I have a really good friend who he talked to me. He saw, some of the podcasts that I've been on and talked to me about my journey, and really thought that he wanted to go into real estate. And, he watched videos, he got really excited about it. And, he went from thinking, okay, I just want to make a couple grand a month to subsidize, my job to make sure that we're bringing enough money in. And that went from him thinking he wants to do this full time and make a career out of it like me. And I got so excited because I'm so close to this guy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like we could take on the world. Like he could join our team. Like this is awesome. And then he made a cold call. So this is months of leading up to, or not months, it's probably a month and a half from when he was like, I'm interested, to I'm training him, I'm putting together all these videos. And then he makes 7 cold calls and he's no longer working with us.
Mm.
So I would say, figure out what you want to do, watch those videos, and then pick something, and then find out what that money-making activity is, and then go do the thing for a week, 90 days, and see if you actually like it, because you're going to waste a lot of time if you just watch a bunch of videos, don't take any action, and then when you do take action, you realize it's not something you want to do.
Yeah. It's kind of an interesting thing, because there's things that are suited to our personality types and our work ethic than others. But at the same time, I also think that if you're determined to like something, you can train yourself like something, which is, I don't know, maybe that's counterintuitive, but I think that it's if you're determined to get something, you will go around any kind of obstacle to get there. And so maybe he just didn't have a good enough why behind what he was doing.
Oh, I agree. 100% agree. But I guess my point is, and I give a quick story about that. Working, I have my own rentals, and when I have to do stuff for those rentals, it's a drag.
Yeah.
But when I'm in wholesaling and I'm solving this person's problem and I'm helping them, and then at the same time we're making money, it makes me alive. Like I just spent three days in northern Arizona cleaning a bunch of mold and, some bodily fluids from someone who passed away in a home. Although it was, disgusting, like it was fun. Like
yeah.
all these obstacles that I'm willing to do because I found my why. Like I'm willing to do whatever it takes ethically to reach my goals. Yeah, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll make those cold calls. I'll get on the phone. I think you're absolutely right. But I would say before you get to that, because it takes time to develop your why.
Yeah, it does. It's not something that happens overnight.
So when you're looking at these different avenues, I think it's important to test out those things while you're figuring out your why, because you're going to need to take some action while you're still figuring it out. And my whole point is not to spend too much time watching videos, dreaming about what something's going to look like, when you're only going to realize it's all hard work.
Yeah.
You know, whether you're a transactional lender like yourself or you're a wholesaler like me, you know, it's the same type of hard work, just a different way of doing it.
Yeah, I think it took me a good 7 months before I got my first transaction through the pipeline, because I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so I had to go out and talk to people, ask them questions, get rejected, change the questions I was asking, and keep trying, you know, and I had to prove that I wanted it.
100%. I forget the guy that Pace had on the wealth. I think he's not a developer. He said, focus on the outcome and then just go take action. And I thought that was like the best advice ever, because it's like, all right, I know where I'm going, but I'm not overthinking it. What's just the next thing I need to do? And then once that happens, you just reflect and, okay, well, what do I need to do next? Why didn't that work? And then just keep taking action.
I struggled with that a little bit when I first started, because I'm like, okay, I'm taking action, but what are the actions I need to take? Like, what constitutes action or not action? Like, I don't know what the difference is, but I think it comes down to the fact that you can have declarative knowledge, which is just things that you recite, like on a test or report to somebody. And then there's procedural knowledge, which is how to actually do the thing. And no matter how many books you read, you're never going to know how to ride a bicycle until you get on the bicycle yourself. And so 100%. That's the same thing here. You got to go out and try to figure out why things work the way they work. Otherwise, you'll never understand.
Yeah, no, it's a good balance. And I mean, I think you should get enough education to know what the procedural action is, and then just go do it.
Yep. Awesome. You know, that's excellent advice. And I'm on board with that. Everybody who's listening, make sure you default to action. Just go out and do it and make mistakes. And this is the thing. It's okay to make mistakes. Even if you are uncomfortable, even if you're scared and you're doing it messy or imperfect, just go do it in that fashion and then make improvements after the fact.
Yeah. And when in the middle of it and you've made that mistake and you're like, I don't even know what to do next, that's when you can reach out to people like us and we'll help you along the way. I mean, you don't have to have all the answers. Just go out there, take action. I mean, don't break any laws, but take your perfect action, and then people like us can help you out. We'll get you
there. We want to make money, not go to jail.
100%. So maybe know the action steps and also know the laws and then take action.
Got it. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you today, Jared. This has been the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. Thank you so much for tuning in.